Mérida, Yucatan. What is now a crowded city of urban Mexicans once stood as the lone Mecca to the entirety of the southern peninsula. As the name suggests, the region known as Yucatan once was made of the landmasses of the modern states of Campeche, Quintana Roo, and Tabasco, and similarly were once united under the same flag. The banner, comprised of a green field containing 5 stars on the leftmost third and a horizontal pattern of red, white, and red stripes covering the center and rightmost third of the flag, only flew in official capacity for a 5.5-year period between 1841 and 1847. So, what was this forgotten republic?
In colonial times, the Spanish ruled over the peninsula in a generally lax captaincy general organization held by the Viceroyalty of New Spain. This is comparable to the age of salutary neglect by the British over the American colonies in the early part of the 18th century. So, Yucatan and what's traditionally known as Mexico actually developed quite separately.
Entering the age of Mexican independence, the infant Mexican federal government extended an invitation to Yucatan to join the Regency's soon-to-be empire by President Agustín de Iturbide. The Mérida elite, seeing this in a positive light with hopes for economic prosperity, accepted the offer. Unfortunately, they were to immediately regret it with the sudden shift to a centralist government with an Emperor Iturbide that squandered any hopes of a combined autonomy and partnership with Mexico. The Mérida government was quick to separate itself in 1823, and in 1824 a new constitution was written that held Yucatan as a mostly independent province. This itself was then repealed in 1835 by President-Dictator Antonio López de Santa Anna. The tension between the two territories predictably led to an invasion by the dictator in 1840, one that Yucatan would successfully repel and follow up with an official declaration of independence.
So it's actually at this time that a mob of mostly mestizo citizens stormed the council building in Mérida on the night of March 6, 1841, to tear down the Mexican flag and finally, for the first time, raise the flag of the Republic of Yucatan. So Santa Anna is already pretty frustrated at this point because he realizes that these rebels are taking inspiration from the Texians of 5 years prior, and obviously the rebellions, a plethora of rebellions at this time, including that of Zacatecas and the possible Republic of the Rio Grande. And of course, he is pressured with his army already spread thin by the incoming French of the Patriot War.
Presidente Santiago Méndez Ibarra was celebrated for the moment, as he was heralded as the leader of the newly freed republic. However, he and the Mérida Congress would soon realize there was something more sinister preparing to rear its head. In the years between 1821 and 1840, Terry Rugeley of the University of Oklahoma describes the development of a racial schism between the Mayan peasant class and the Creole mestizo peninsular elites, spurred by the role of the Catholic Church. During this period of ever-increasing state intervention in the Yucatan, a class system had developed among the rural parishes known as cabeceras and their satellite villages called exilios that the government used to enforce its ordinances upon the people. Starting with the curas, these men were priests stationed in churches originally established to support encomienda among the Maya and would facilitate the taxation and land reforms set by Mérida and collect tithes and subventions in the name of the church. Secondly, batabs were Maya peasants brought to a barely elite level to act as the enforcement arm between the curas and the Creole officials on one side and the Mayas themselves on the other. This institutional separation of power only worked to the detriment of the peasantry and would usher forth an age of compiling grievances. A forgotten battalion of the Yucatan Revolution were the conscripted Maya, forced to fight on the promise of good land for milpa and tax reduction. Additionally, the unsteady relationship between the church and state was reflected in the treatment of the Mayas by members of clergy as well. Beatings and forceful debt collection were commonplace, which quite predictably fomented resentment to the arbiters of such atrocities. This instability also created an ever-changing fiscal policy that would rarely change in the favor of the poor, decreasing the faith the Maya had in the government.
So it's because of grievances like this that in July of 1847, Creole leaders like Santiago Iman and Maya leaders like Bonifacio Novello, Cecilio Chi, and Jacinto Pat actually inspired an uprising and waged war on the mostly white mestizo majority areas of Yucatan. So this Guerra de Castas would claim the lives of over 200,000 people in villages like Teosuco and Tizcacalcapul, although most of those lives would be taken by a simultaneous cholera epidemic.
Many years later, a visit to the reduced state by former American President U.S. Grant would stir emotions among the masses. As Rugeley writes in his work, Rebellion Now and Forever, Yucatecans faded Grant, but they rejected Iman, their own. Memory of catastrophes the liberator brought was pain that no one could bear, and that spirits such as Santiago Iman could not be suppressed entirely, as the horrors that followed his and others' raising of the lands are ingrained in the stories of the peninsula forever. The regrettable quarreling of local politics continues today, much to the dismay of the Maya that remember.